when a 7-year-old boy in a Hawaiian orphanage picked up a crayon and drew an octopus with 7 arms because he ran out of space. He had no idea that on the exact same morning, thousands of miles away in Los Angeles, a man was sitting at a kitchen table with cold coffee and trembling hands, staring at an email that was about to change both of their lives forever. The boy's name was Milo. He had dark eyes that never missed anything. He knew the names of every fish in the aquarium near his home. He drew octopuses the way other kids drew sunshine, constantly, carefully, like it was the most important thing in the world. He had lived his whole life in a place called Hal Malamalama, which means House of Light in Hawaiian, with no mother, no father, and no family coming to claim him. Every Christmas, while the other children wrote long lists asking for toys and games and bicycles, Milo asked for one thing, just one. The same thing, every single year, someone to bring him to school. Not a present, not something wrapped in paper, just a person walking beside him through the school gate, so the other kids would see that he too belonged to somebody. Nobody ever came, until the morning a DNA test changed everything. On March 12, 2024, Keanu Reeves, the man the whole world knows as Neo, as John Wick, as one of the most famous faces on the planet, woke up at 6:14 in the morning in his home in the Hollywood Hills, made himself a cup of coffee, sat down at his kitchen table, and opened his laptop. There were 34 emails. He almost closed it, but something made him stop. Near the bottom of the list was a subject line so plain and so small-looking that most people would have scrolled right past it. It said, DNA match, urgent, Child Welfare Services, Oahu, Hawaii. He clicked it open. He read it once, then again. Then a third time, because the words on the screen were telling him something so enormous, so completely life-rearranging, that his brain needed 3 attempts just to let them in. A 7-year-old boy, born September 3, 2016, living in an orphanage in Honolulu. No known family, no father on his birth certificate. DNA registered by the state of Hawaii when he turned 5, the way the law requires for all children in long-term care, so that if anyone was ever looking, they could be found. The match had come back. Not a distant relative. Not a maybe or a possibly. A first-degree paternal match. 99.97%. Keanu Reeves had a son who had been waiting in a house of light in Hawaii for 7 years. A son who drew octopuses with 7 arms and asked for the same Christmas gift every year and had never once in his entire life had someone walk him through the school gate. His coffee went cold. His hands went still. And then, before he called his lawyer, before he called his agent, before he called anyone whose job it was to think about consequences, he did something that told you everything you needed to know about who Keanu Reeves actually is, beneath the movies, and the legend, and the famous face. He reached for his car keys. Before he had even finished reading the email, before he had made a single plan, or asked a single question, or thought about what any of this meant for his career, or his reputation, or his carefully private life. He just reached. Because somewhere in Hawaii, in a room with a climbing rock near a mango tree where you could see the ocean if you leaned exactly right, a little boy with 3 hearts and a 7-armed octopus was waiting. And Keanu Reeves, who had spent 25 years carrying a grief so heavy most people would have collapsed under it, had already made his decision. It took him exactly as long as it takes to read an email. Now here is where it gets extraordinary. Because what happened next, what Keanu did, what Milo said, what took place in a courtroom on a Tuesday morning in Honolulu that made a 30-year veteran lawyer put her pen down and stare at the wall, is the kind of story that makes you believe, even when you have stopped believing in most things, that some people find each other exactly when they are supposed to. But there is also a moment in this story, a single question that a 7-year-old boy asked a man he had known for less than 2 hours, that will stop you completely. A question so simple and so devastating that everyone who heard it had to look away. And there is something Milo did in a courtroom 6 months later, after he signed his name on the most important piece of paper of his entire life, that Keanu Reeves has never told anyone. 4 words. Quiet enough that only one person in that room heard them. Words that Keanu will carry for the rest of his life. We are going to tell you all of it. Every single part. From the cold coffee and the trembling hands, to the climbing rock and the 7-armed octopus, to the school gate on a September morning that cost one man nothing and meant to one small boy absolutely everything. Stay with us. Because this is the story of a man who lost a daughter on Christmas Eve and carried her photograph across 2 oceans for 25 years, and a boy who kept one heart safe his whole life, waiting without knowing he was waiting, for someone to simply show up and stay. Watch this video to the end, because the moment this story has been building toward, the moment that explains everything, the moment that will make complete sense of every single detail you are about to hear, only comes at the very end. And trust us, it is worth every second of the wait. Keanu Reeves does not sleep like a movie star. Most people picture Hollywood actors stretched out in giant beds with silk sheets, blackout curtains pulled tight, and someone waiting downstairs to bring them breakfast on a silver tray. They picture ease. They picture soft mornings with no sharp edges. People who actually know Keanu will tell you something different. They will tell you he wakes up early. He makes his own coffee, dark, no sugar, in a plain mug he has owned for years. He sits at his kitchen table in the quiet, before the city starts its noise. He thinks. He reads. He breathes. On the morning of March 12, 2024, he woke at 6:14 a.m. in his home in the Hollywood Hills. The house surprises people who visit for the first time. There are no gold faucets, no indoor fountain, no art on the walls that costs more than a house somewhere else. There are good wooden floors worn smooth in the walking places. There are bookshelves with actual books on them, spines cracked, pages bent. There is a motorcycle in the garage that he rides when the road feels more honest than the city. He was 59 years old that morning. His knees ached the way they always do now. He had been filming the day before and had insisted, as he always insists, on doing his own stunts. The crew had watched him hit the mat 11 times on one particular sequence. 11 times he got back up. That is the thing about Keanu Reeves that people who work with him never forget. He always gets back up. He made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened his laptop. There were 34 emails in his personal inbox. Most were forwarded from his management team. Fan letters, event invitations, a note from his agent about scheduling. He scrolled through them slowly, the way a person scrolls when nothing feels urgent. He almost closed the laptop entirely and took his coffee outside. Something made him stop. The email sat near the bottom of the list. The subject line was plain and small-looking, the way truly important things sometimes look before you open them. DNA match, urgent, Child Welfare Services, Oahu, Hawaii. He read it 3 times, just sitting there, before he even clicked. Then he clicked. The message was from a woman named Cassandra Wakefield. She listed her title beneath her name: Licensed Family Services Coordinator, Hale Malamalama Children's Home, Honolulu, Hawaii. Her writing was careful and professional, but there was warmth underneath it, the way good people write when they know they are holding something that could break. She explained that a child, a boy, 7 years old, born September 3, 2016, in Honolulu, had been living at the home since infancy, with no identified family. She explained that Hawaii state law requires DNA registration for all children in long-term foster care when they turn 5, so that biological relatives who come looking can be found, or so that relatives who do not yet know they should be looking can be found instead. The boy's DNA had been registered 2 years earlier. The match had come back. Cassandra chose her next words with great care. A first-degree paternal match. a 99.97% probability. Not a cousin, not a distant connection somewhere back in a family tree. A son. She wrote that no assumptions were being made. She wrote that no demands would follow. She wrote that she was contacting him solely because the law required it, and because the child deserved the chance. What happens next, Mr. Reeves, is entirely your decision. He read the email 4 full times. His coffee went cold. Outside the window, the Hollywood Hills were just beginning to turn gold in the early light. The city below was waking up slowly. Engines starting, birds moving. The ordinary machinery of a Tuesday. He did not call his lawyer. He did not call his agent or his publicist or anyone whose job it was to think about consequences before feelings. He called Alexandra Grant. She answered on the second ring, her voice still carrying the texture of early morning. "I got something," he said. A pause. "Come over," he said. "Please." She asked him if he was all right. He looked at the email again, at the name of the boy, which Cassandra had written just once, at the very end of the message, like something precious kept safe until the last possible moment. Milo. "I don't know yet," Keanu said quietly, but his hand, already reaching for his car keys out of pure reflex, told a different story entirely. 7-year-old Milo did not know what DNA was. He knew what a parrotfish was. He knew that the mango tree on the east side of the playground dropped fruit every August, and that if you got there early enough on a Tuesday, it was always Tuesdays for some reason, you could find ones that had fallen whole and unbruised. He knew that the best crayon in the art room was the dark blue one labeled Midnight Ocean, because it was the only color that looked exactly right when you were drawing deep water. He knew that Miss P smelled like jasmine, and that she was the safest person in any room she walked into. He knew a great many things. But DNA was not one of them. On the morning that Cassandra Wakefield sat at her desk and typed an email that would change the course of his life, Milo was in the small library at the far end of the home's main hallway, cross-legged on the reading rug, looking at a book about ocean animals. He could read most of the words now. His teacher at Kaimuki Elementary School, a patient woman named Mrs. Tanaka, who wore the same 3 sweaters on rotation, had told his caseworker in February that Milo was reading above his grade level. He had not told anyone at the home about that. He was not sure why. Maybe because being good at something quietly felt safer than being good at something out loud. The book was open to the octopus page. He had looked at this page so many times that the bottom corner had gone soft and slightly gray from his thumb. The photograph showed a common-day octopus, Octopus cyanea, spread wide against a coral reef, its arms trailing out in 8 directions, like it owned every inch of the ocean, and was simply choosing, at that particular moment, to be still. He liked that about octopuses. They were very good at being still when they needed to be, and then very fast when they needed to be that instead. Milo understood both of those things personally. His full name was Milo Kahananui. The last name came from his mother, Leilani Kahananui, who had brought him into the world at Kapiolani Medical Center for Women and Children on September 3, 2016, and had held him for 11 months before the world took her away from him in the particular and permanent way that the world sometimes does. He had been at Haile Malamalama. The name meant House of Light in Hawaiian, which Milo thought was a good name for a place that tried very hard. Since October 2017, when he was not yet 1 year old. He had no memory of arriving. His earliest memory was of the mobile above his crib in the infant room, small wooden fish turning slowly in the breeze from the window. Blue and green and yellow. He had decided early on that the yellow one was the friendliest. His primary caregiver for as long as he could remember was Ms. Priya Nandakumar, Miss P, a woman of 44, with dark eyes, a wide and ready laugh, and a habit of wearing a small jasmine flower tucked above her left ear on days she wanted to feel hopeful. She wore it often. She had worked at Haile Malamalama for 16 years, had cared for more children than she could easily count, and had made a private and personal rule sometime around year 3 that she would not have favorites. Milo had broken that rule without trying. It was not his face, though his face was the kind of quiet and serious that made adults want to ask what he was thinking. It was not his intelligence, though he was clearly and unusually sharp. It was something harder to name. Something about the way he moved through the world, carefully, observantly, without complaint, that reminded Priya of a person who had already accepted certain difficult truths and was simply getting on with things. He had been getting on with things since he was old enough to walk. At Christmas every year, the home organized a gift drive. Local businesses donated toys and games and art supplies. The children were asked in November to write or draw their Christmas wishes so the coordinators could try to match requests to donations. The other children's lists were long and energetic: gaming consoles, remote control cars, specific dolls with specific names, bicycles in specific colors. Milo's list, every year since he was old enough to make one, had contained a single item. Not a toy, not a game, not anything that could be wrapped. Someone to bring me to school. Just that. Just someone walking beside him through the school gate so that the other children, the ones with mothers who fixed their collars at the last moment, with fathers who carried their backpacks halfway across the yard, would see that he, too, belonged to somebody. Priya always took him. Every year, she held his hand through the gate and stood there long enough for it to count. It was the only time, without fail, that Milo smiled the full smile, the unguarded one, the one that had nothing behind it except pure and simple relief. He never said thank you. He didn't need to. She already knew. That morning, as Milo sat with his octopus book and the door of the library stood open to the hall, Cassandra Wakefield appeared in the doorway. She was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and the unhurried walk of someone who had learned long ago that rushing toward difficult things rarely made them easier. She sat down on the reading rug beside him, not in the adult chair across the room, on the rug, at his level. She had always done that, and it was one of the reasons Milo trusted her. "Milo," she said quietly, "do you remember what we talked about your special file, how we look for family?" He looked up from the octopus page. His dark eyes went still in the particular way they did when he was paying full attention, which was different from the way other children paid attention. There was no performance in it, just a door, opening. "Did you find one?" he asked. Cassandra had prepared the words carefully. She had learned over 11 years that the space between a child's hope and a child's heartbreak was often no wider than a single poorly chosen sentence. "We might have found someone," she said. "We're still making sure of everything. Nothing is decided yet, okay? But we're looking." Milo held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked back down at the book, at the octopus, spread wide and still against the coral, owning all 8 directions at once. "Okay," he said. He turned the page, but his thumb, Cassandra noticed, was trembling slightly against the paper. Just slightly. Just enough. Next chapter. Who Keanu Reeves really is, beneath the legend, the losses that shaped him, the grief he never put down, and why a 7-year-old boy's email was the one thing in 25 years that made his hand move before his mind did. To understand why Keanu Reeves responded to that email the way he did, keys already in hand, heart already decided, mind still catching up, you have to understand what he had been carrying for a very long time. Not the movie version of him, not Neo, not John Wick, the real version. The one who grew up without a floor underneath him. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. Was not for graduations when Beirut was still called the Paris of the Middle East. Beautiful and busy, and full of the kind of light that makes people believe good things are permanent. His father, Samuel Nowlin Reeves Jr., was a geologist of Hawaiian and Chinese descent. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was a costume designer from England. They were young and they were restless, and the combination of those two things rarely holds a family together for long. Samuel left when Keanu was 3 years old. He did not leave quietly or cleanly. Over the years, he drifted further, into drugs, into legal trouble, into a life that had no room in it for the son he had left behind, in a city that was itself beginning to come apart. When Keanu was 13, Samuel was arrested and imprisoned in Hawaii for drug-related offenses. Father and son would see each other only a handful of times after that. Keanu has said, in the careful way he says difficult things, that the relationship never healed into anything whole. Patricia moved the children after Samuel left, first to Sydney, then to New York, then to Toronto, which is where Keanu grew up in the way that matters. School years, hockey, the particular loneliness of being the new kid in a city that already had all the friends it needed. He attended 4 different high schools. He was dyslexic, in an era when dyslexia was not well understood, and teachers sometimes confused it with not trying. He tried very hard, at almost everything. Acting found him the way things find people who are searching for somewhere to belong. He was good at it immediately, not in a showy way, but in the way of someone who understood, instinctively, what it meant to be someone other than yourself. He moved to Los Angeles. The career grew slowly, and then all at once, the way careers do when they finally catch. Speed in 1994. The Matrix in 1999. A face that people recognized everywhere on Earth. But 1999 was also the year his life split in two. His girlfriend Jennifer Syme was carrying their daughter. They had chosen the name Ava Archer Syme Reeves. On December 24, 1999, Christmas Eve, Ava was delivered stillborn at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. She was 8 months along. She was perfect, and she was gone, and there was no category in human experience that adequately holds that particular grief. The relationship between Keanu and Jennifer did not survive it. Grief of that size changes the shape of everything around it. They separated. On April 2, 2001, Jennifer Syme drove alone at night on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles. Her car left the road. She was 28 years old. Keanu has never spoken publicly about that night in any detail. He has spoken about grief in general, always carefully, always briefly, the way a person speaks about a room they still live in, but have stopped trying to describe to strangers. In a 2019 interview with Stephen Colbert on The Late Show, Colbert asked him what he believed happened after we die. Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." The audience went silent, in the way audiences go silent when something true passes through a room. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. What he did in the years after those losses was quieter than most people noticed. He gave enormous amounts of money to causes he did not attach his name to. The special effects and costume teams on the Matrix franchise received profit-sharing arrangements he initiated himself, arrangements that were wildly unusual in Hollywood and that he never once discussed publicly. When his sister Kim was diagnosed with leukemia in 1991, he restructured his finances around her treatment and was present in the way that counts, which is consistently and without fanfare. He rode his motorcycle on empty roads. He read books. He showed up. When Alexandra Grant came into his life, and then, in 2019, publicly and warmly, walked beside him at the LACMA Art Plus Film Gala, and the whole world noticed that Keanu Reeves was finally, quietly happy, people felt something genuine about it. Strangers on the internet, who rarely agree on anything, agreed on this. He deserved it. Because they sensed, without knowing the full weight of it, what he had carried to get there. So when Alexandra arrived at his house that Tuesday morning and sat across from him at the kitchen table and read Cassandra Wakefield's email for herself, when she looked up and found him watching her face while she read, she understood immediately what was happening inside him. He was not panicking. He was not calculating. He had the look of a man who had been waiting, without knowing he was waiting, for a very long time. "Keanu," she said carefully, "there are steps. There's a process. You don't even know yet if—" "I know enough," he said. "You know enough to get on a plane?" He looked at the email one more time, at the name written near the bottom of the page. Milo. "Yeah," he said simply. "I know enough to get on a plane." His team wanted to arrange a private jet. They made the call within an hour of Alexandra phoning his manager, which she did at his request, because he was already in the shower and already thinking about what to pack, and already, in every way that mattered, gone. A private jet made sense. It was faster. It was controlled. No one would see him board. No one would photograph him at the gate or recognize him in the aisle, or post a story online about Keanu Reeves flying to Honolulu alone with a carry-on bag and the look of a man carrying something heavy and invisible. He said no. He said he didn't want to arrive like a production. He had thought about it for exactly as long as it took to button his shirt, and the answer was no. He wanted to arrive like a person, tired from a real flight, sitting in a real seat, breathing the same recycled air as everyone else, making their way across the Pacific for their own private and urgent reasons. He booked Hawaiian Airlines Flight 16 from Los Angeles International Airport to Daniel K. Inouye International Airport in Honolulu, departing March 15, 2024, at 8:55 in the morning. 5 hours and 4 minutes of ocean beneath him and sky above, and nothing in between to do except sit with what he was flying toward. He packed one carry-on bag, a change of clothes, a toothbrush, his worn copy of a James Baldwin novel he had been reading slowly for a month, the kind of reading you do when you want a book to last, a phone charger, and at the very last moment, standing at his bedroom door with the bag already over his shoulder, he went back to the drawer in his nightstand and took out a photograph. It was not in a frame. It had never been in a frame. Frames felt too permanent, too display-like for something this private. It was a photograph printed on regular paper, slightly soft at the edges from years of careful handling, kept flat inside a folded piece of card, the same way you keep something you need to protect, but also need to be able to reach. The photograph was of his daughter Ava, taken at Cedars-Sinai on December 24, 1999, the only photograph that existed of her. No one outside his closest circle had ever seen it, and he had never described it in any interview or conversation that became public. He had carried it in his bag for 25 years, the way some people carry a compass. Not because they are lost, but because knowing which direction is true north makes every other direction make more sense. He placed it carefully in the front pocket of the bag. He zipped it shut. At LAX, he wore a dark cap pulled low and a plain dark jacket with the collar up. A woman in the boarding line recognized him anyway. People almost always do, regardless of the hat, because there is something about the way he moves that is simply and specifically him. And she asked quietly if she could take a photo. He said yes. He smiled. She thanked him and went back to her boarding pass, and he put his headphones in, and that was the end of it. He sat in seat 24A, window. He did not watch the in-flight entertainment. He opened the Baldwin novel and read the same paragraph 4 times without absorbing a single word, and then closed it and put it in the seat pocket and looked out the window instead. The Pacific Ocean from 35,000 feet looks like something that has no beginning and no end. Just blue in every direction, until the blue becomes sky and you can't find the line between them. Keanu looked at it for a long time. Somewhere over the middle of that water, somewhere past the point where turning back and going forward are exactly the same distance, he reached into the front pocket of his bag. He unfolded the card. He looked at the photograph for a long time, the way he had looked at it 1,000 times before, not with fresh grief anymore, but with something older and quieter. The way you look at a thing you have made peace with, mostly, but never entirely. Ava. He thought about what it means to be a father. Not in theory. Not in the movie version where it is noble and clean and scored with music that tells you how to feel. In the actual version. The one where you wake up at 6:14 in the morning, with aching knees and cold coffee, and an email that rewrites everything in the space of 3 paragraphs. He thought about a boy in a home called House of Light, drawing octopuses, naming fish, asking for the same Christmas gift every single year. He folded the photograph back into its card. He placed it carefully in his pocket, and he kept his eyes on the blue outside the window for the rest of the flight. Not because there was anything to see, but because looking at something vast and open felt, right then, like exactly the right thing to do. Cassandra Wakefield met him the following morning, March 16, at the offices of Hale Malamalama. She was tall, silver-streaked, unhurried. She had asked her staff to treat the morning like any other morning. She had not told Milo anything new. She closed the office door. She laid the documents on the table between them. The DNA report from the Hawaii Family Services Laboratory at the University of Hawaii at Manoa was on top. Keanu looked at the match percentage printed in plain black type at the center of the page. 99.97%. He stared at it for a moment. Then Cassandra slid a photograph across the table. A young woman, long black hair, a wide, warm smile. A beach somewhere behind her, probably Maui, probably summer, probably a day that felt ordinary at the time, the way days always do, before they become the days you look back at. Keanu looked at the photograph for a long time without speaking. When he finally looked up, his eyes were the eyes of a man standing at the exact place where the past and the future meet, right at the line, right where you cannot tell one from the other. "Can I meet him?" he asked. It was the first question he asked. Not "Are you sure?" Not "What are my legal options?" Not "How do we keep this quiet?" Just that. Just, "Can I meet him?" Cassandra looked at him steadily. "Tomorrow morning," she said quietly. 10 o'clock. He did not sleep that night. He lay in the small apartment he had rented in the Kaimuki neighborhood, a quiet residential area of Honolulu, where the streets are lined with old trees, and the houses sit close together, and nobody is particularly interested in who their neighbors are or what they are going through. The apartment had a ceiling fan that turned slowly, and a window that looked out at a row of telephone wires and a slice of dark sky. He watched the ceiling fan turn. He thought about what you say to a 7-year-old boy you have never met, but who shares 99.97% of a paternal genetic connection with you. He thought about what words exist for that specific situation. He went through several possibilities in his mind and discarded all of them, because every version sounded either too large or too small for what the moment actually was. By 4 in the morning, he had decided to say nothing planned at all. He would just show up. He would just be there. He would follow the boy's lead, the way you follow the lead of any person you are meeting for the first time, and hoping very much will not be afraid of you. He arrived at Hale Malamalama at 9:52 a.m. on March 17, 2024. The home sat on a gentle rise in the Palolo Valley area of Honolulu, surrounded by a low white fence with a painted wooden sign at the gate. Beyond the main building there was a yard, wide and flat and practical, the kind of yard designed not for beauty but for children, which meant it had a basketball hoop with a net that had seen better days, and a painted hopscotch grid on the concrete, and an old climbing rock near a mango tree at the eastern edge of the grass. Cassandra met him at the side entrance. Beside her was James Aloha, the child welfare monitor assigned to the visit, a broad, quiet man in his 40s, with kind eyes and the specific stillness of someone who had learned that his presence in difficult moments should take up as little space as possible. James shook Keanu's hand without making anything of it. "He's on the playground," Cassandra said. "He doesn't know you're coming specifically. I told him a visitor was coming who might be connected to his family search. He asked if he should wear his good shirt." Keanu looked at her. "What did you tell him?" "I told him his regular shirt was perfect," Cassandra said. She paused. "He wore his good shirt." Keanu pressed his lips together and nodded once, and looked at the ground for a moment, and then straightened up. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." They crossed the yard slowly. The morning was warm and bright, the way Honolulu mornings almost always are. The kind of light that makes everything look slightly more hopeful than it did the day before. A group of younger children were playing near the basketball hoop. Two older kids sat on the concrete steps talking. Nobody paid particular attention to the adults walking toward the eastern edge of the grass. Keanu saw Milo before Milo saw him. The boy was sitting at the base of the climbing rock, cross-legged in the grass, a stick in his right hand, drawing something slowly and deliberately in the dirt in front of him. He was wearing a pale blue button-up shirt that was very clearly his good shirt. Slightly too neat, slightly too careful for a regular Tuesday morning in a playground. Keanu stopped walking. Something moved through him that he could not have named and would not have tried to. James Aloha put a quiet hand briefly on his arm, not stopping him, just steadying him. The way you steady a person who has just seen something that has temporarily rearranged the world. "Whenever you're ready," James said softly. Keanu took a breath that went all the way down. He walked across the remaining stretch of grass alone and crouched down at the base of the rock, a few feet from where Milo was drawing, close enough to be present, far enough not to crowd. He got low deliberately, folding himself down so that he and the boy were at exactly the same level. So the boy would not have to look up at a tall stranger looming over him against the morning sky. He waited. Milo looked up. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Milo studied him with those dark, careful, taking everything in eyes. The eyes of a child who has learned that the world rewards paying close attention. Keanu met his gaze and held it and did not look away and did not perform anything. He just looked back. "Hey," he said. "Hi," said Milo. A beat. "What are you drawing?" Keanu asked. Milo looked down at the dirt. The drawing had a round body and several long arms extending outward in different directions. "An octopus," he said. Keanu studied it seriously, with the full attention of someone who genuinely wanted to understand the drawing and was not merely being polite. "That's a good one," he said. "How many arms does an octopus have?" Milo looked at him the way 7-year-olds look at adults, who have asked a question the answer to which is so obvious it barely deserves the energy of answering. But he answered it anyway, because he was a polite child, and also because he loved the answer. "8, he said. "But I only drew 7. I ran out of space." Keanu looked at the drawing again, at the 7 careful arms spreading out through the dirt. "Yeah," he said. "That happens." A small silence settled between them. Not an awkward one. The kind that has room in it. The kind that two people can sit inside without either of them needing to fill it immediately with words. "What's your name?" Milo asked. "Keanu." Milo tried it carefully, the way you try a word in a language you are just beginning to learn. "Keanu." "Close enough," Keanu said. "That sounds Hawaiian." "It is Hawaiian," Keanu said. "It means cool breeze over the mountains." Milo considered this with the seriousness it deserved, turning it over in his mind the way he turned everything over before he decided what to do with it. "My name means soldier," he said. "Miss P told me." He paused. "But I don't want to be a soldier. I want to be a marine biologist." "What does a marine biologist do?" Keanu asked, though he knew. He asked because asking was the right thing right then. Because this boy had things he wanted to say and all he needed was someone to make the space for him to say them. Milo sat up slightly straighter. "They study the ocean," he said. with the quiet authority of someone who has been researching this for some time. Especially octopuses. Octopuses are the smartest animal in the whole ocean. They can open jars, they can change color, and they have 3 hearts. He held up 3 fingers to make sure the number landed correctly. 3, Keanu said. 3, Milo confirmed. He looked back at his drawing. Most animals only get 1. Keanu looked at the boy, at the good shirt and the stick in his hand, and the 7-armed octopus drawn carefully in the dirt, and felt something move in his chest. Not a sharp thing, not the grief he knew so well, the kind with edges, something different. Something that had been still for a very long time, and was only now, in this warm Honolulu morning beside a mango tree, beginning slowly and carefully to move. Like a door, not slamming open, just opening. From 20 feet away, Cassandra stood with her arms folded and one hand pressed over her mouth. James Aloha looked at the ground. Neither of them spoke. "Can I sit here for a bit?" Keanu asked. Milo shrugged, the specific shrug of a 7-year-old who is pleased but unwilling to appear too pleased. "It's the best spot on the whole playground," he said. "You can see the ocean from the top if you lean right." Keanu looked up at the rock, then back at Milo. "Maybe you can show me," he said. And Milo, without thinking about it, without deciding to, in the unconscious and total way that children do the things they have needed to do for a very long time, reached out and took the hand of the man sitting beside him in the grass, just like that, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he had been waiting his whole short life for a hand that would simply be there when he reached. Cassandra turned away. James kept looking at the ground. Above them both, in the mango tree, something small and unseen moved through the branches, and the whole tree shivered once, gently, in the warm morning air. The lawyers arrived from Los Angeles on March 19th. There were 3 of them. They flew private, which was the correct and expected thing for lawyers to do when their client was Keanu Reeves, and the matter involved a potential paternity case in a state where neither the client nor the lawyers were based. They wore good suits and carried leather briefcases and had the particular energy of people who are very good at their jobs and know it and need you to know it too. Keanu met them in a conference room at a quiet hotel in downtown Honolulu. He had rented the room for 3 hours. He sat at one end of the table with a glass of water he didn't touch. They sat at the other end with their laptops open and their documents laid out in the careful order of people who believe that order itself is a form of protection. He listened to everything they said. He was a good listener. People who had worked with him for years said this was one of the things that surprised them most, that a man of his particular kind of fame still listened like someone who genuinely expected to learn something from the other person. He did not check his phone. He did not interrupt. He let them finish completely before he said a single word. They told him the process under Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 578, was thorough and deliberately slow. Establishing legal paternity for a child already in state care involved multiple layers: formal DNA verification filed with the court, a full background investigation, a licensed home study of any residence where the child might be placed, a guardian ad litem appointed solely to represent the child's interests, and a series of family court hearings before any change in custody could be considered. They estimated the timeline at 6 months on the short end, possibly closer to a year, possibly longer depending on the court's schedule and the complexity of the case. They strongly advised him to return to Los Angeles while the preliminary filings were completed. His presence in Honolulu, they explained, was a variable they could not fully control. If the press connected him to the story before the legal process was complete, the resulting attention could complicate proceedings, create pressure on the court, and most importantly, expose the child to public scrutiny before any decision about his future had been made. They were not wrong about any of it. Keanu nodded slowly through all of it. He asked 2 or 3 precise questions about the court filing process. He asked about the guardian ad litem, what their role was exactly, how they were selected, what weight their recommendation carried with the judge. He asked about the home study requirements and what specifically the evaluators would be looking for. Good questions, careful questions, the questions of a man who was taking the process seriously. Then he put his hands flat on the table. "I'm not going back to Los Angeles," he said. The room was quiet for a moment. The senior lawyer, a composed woman named Margaret Ellison who had handled sensitive cases for 30 years and was not easily surprised, looked at him steadily. "Keanu," she said. "The risk of—" "I heard everything you said," he told her. Not impatiently, not dismissively, simply and clearly, the way he said most things. "And I understand all of it. I'll do the background check, full and voluntary, whatever they need to see. I'll cooperate completely with the home study, both here and in Los Angeles. I will attend every court date and every review, and I will not speak publicly about any of it." He paused. "But I am not leaving Honolulu." Margaret studied him. "The visitation process," she said carefully. "If you stay and pursue contact before legal status is established, it has to go through the home's supervised protocol. You understand that means structured visits, a monitor present, strict time limits." "Good," he said immediately. "Whatever protects him. That's the only thing I care about right now." Another silence. Margaret looked down at her documents, then back at him. In 30 years, she had sat across from a great many people in difficult circumstances. She had learned to distinguish between the ones who wanted a particular outcome and the ones who wanted the right outcome. They were not always the same person. She made a small note on her legal pad. "We'll file the preliminary paternity petition with the family court of the First Circuit tomorrow morning," she said. "And we'll contact Cassandra Wakefield to arrange the supervised visitation schedule." "Thank you," Keanu said. He stood. He shook each of their hands. He walked to the door. He turned back once, his hand on the frame. "One more thing," he said. "Nobody talks to the press. Nobody leaks anything. Not a word, not a hint. I don't care about the story. I care about that boy going through this without a camera pointed at him." Margaret nodded. "Understood," she said. He left. The 3 lawyers sat for a moment in the quiet of the conference room, the Honolulu morning pressing warm and bright against the windows. Then Margaret closed her laptop. "File everything tonight," she said to the associate beside her. "First thing tomorrow morning, we're in that courthouse." She picked up her pen. On her legal pad, beneath her small note from a few minutes earlier, she wrote 4 words and underlined them once. "He means every word." The apartment in Kaimuki became his life for the weeks that followed. He woke early. He made coffee. He read. He went to the home on the days Cassandra's supervised visitation schedule permitted. Tuesdays and Saturdays, 2 hours each. Monitor present, notes taken. He walked back to the apartment afterward and sat with what the visits left in him, which was always something too full and too quiet to talk about with anyone except Alexandra, who called every evening and listened without trying to fix anything, because she understood that some things are not broken. They are just becoming something new, slowly and at their own pace. On the days he could not visit, he thought about a boy on a climbing rock, leaning right, looking for the ocean. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in the first week of May 2024. 7 weeks had passed since the first visit on the playground. 7 weeks of Tuesdays and Saturdays, 2 hours each, monitor present, notes taken. 7 weeks of octopus drawings and ocean facts, and the slow and careful business of 2 people, one of them very small, one of them very famous, both of them very careful, learning the particular shape of each other. They had settled into a rhythm, the way rivers settle into their banks, not all at once, but gradually, finding the natural path of least resistance, until the path feels like it was always there. Milo drew. Keanu read. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Both were fine. They had been to the Waikiki Aquarium once. A Wednesday visit that Cassandra had arranged as a special exception to the Tuesday-Saturday schedule because the home's regular field trip fell on a Wednesday, and Keanu had asked quietly if he could come along simply as another adult in the group. Nothing special. Nothing that would make Milo feel watched or displayed. Cassandra had said yes. Milo had shown him every tank in the building with the focused intensity of a scientist showing a colleague around a laboratory he had built himself. He knew the fish by species and by the names he had given them personally, which were two entirely separate systems that existed comfortably side by side in his mind. "That's a Moorish idol," he told Keanu, pointing at a striped fish moving slowly near the glass. "But I call him Bernard." "Why Bernard?" Keanu asked. Milo looked at the fish thoughtfully. "He moves like a Bernard," he said, in a tone that closed the subject entirely. Keanu did not argue. On the Thursday afternoon in May, they were in the art room. The afternoon light came through the wide windows at a long angle, the kind of light that makes everything inside it look like it is part of a painting. Milo was at the table with his crayons and a fresh sheet of paper. Keanu was in the chair across from him with a book. A different one this time, a collection of Hawaiian history he had bought at a small shop in Kaimuki that he passed every morning on his walk. The room was quiet in the good way. Priya Nandakumar was at the doorway, as required by the supervision agreement. She had her arms folded loosely and her eyes soft, and she was doing the thing she had learned to do during these visits, being present without intruding, the way good people learn to witness important things without making the witnessing the point. The jasmine flower above her left ear meant she had woken up that morning feeling hopeful. She had worn it every Thursday since the visits began. Milo set his crayon down. He looked at the paper in front of him. Another octopus, this one with all 8 arms, each one drawn with careful, deliberate strokes, each one the right length. His best one yet. He looked at it for a moment the way an artist looks at a finished thing, checking it, assessing it, deciding if it was what he meant it to be. Then he looked up. "Keanu," he said. "Yeah." The word came from behind the book, easy and unhurried, the way it always did. Keanu had learned that Milo sometimes said his name just to confirm he was there. Not because he needed anything, just because the confirmation itself was the thing he needed. But this time was different. Milo's voice had a different weight in it, something underneath the single word that was not casual at all. Keanu lowered the book. He looked at Milo. Milo was looking directly back at him with those dark, steady, taking-everything-in eyes, and his hands flat on the table on either side of the octopus drawing, and his expression was the most serious Keanu had seen it, which was saying something, because Milo had a serious face to begin with. "Are you my dad?" he asked. The art room went absolutely still. Not quiet. It had already been quiet. Still. The specific stillness of a moment that knows it is important and holds itself carefully because of it. At the doorway, Priya's hand found the frame. Keanu set his book face down on the table. He did not look away from Milo. He did not take a long pause to gather himself or choose a careful strategy. He did not reach for any of the prepared responses he had rehearsed in his Kaimuki apartment, in the dark quiet of nights, when sleep would not come. He just looked at the boy, and he told him the truth. "I think I might be," he said. "We're still making sure of everything the right way. The people who take care of you here, Cassandra, Miss P, they're making sure every step is done correctly. To protect you. That's the most important thing." Milo absorbed this in the way he absorbed everything. From the inside, working outward, taking his time. "Did you know about me?" he asked. "Before?" There it was. The real question inside the first question. The one that had been living underneath everything since the very beginning, waiting for the right moment to surface. The way things that matter always eventually surface. regardless of how long they have been held under. Keanu had talked to a child therapist in Honolulu, a gentle, precise woman named Dr. Anika Sousa, who worked regularly with children in the foster care system, and who had spent an hour with him in her office on a rainy April afternoon, helping him understand how to answer this exact question when it came. "Tell the truth," she had said. "Children in care have very finely tuned sensors for adults who are not being straight with them. The truth, delivered with kindness, is always safer than a careful version of it." "No," Keanu said. "I didn't know about you. And I need you to understand something important, Milo." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows on the table, so the distance between them was smaller. "If I had known, if anyone had told me, I would have come. Right away. The same day." Milo studied his face, checking it, assessing it, deciding if it was what it appeared to be, the same way he assessed the octopus drawing, the same way he assessed everything that mattered. "How come you didn't know?" he asked. "Because sometimes things happen between grown-ups that don't go the way they should," Keanu said carefully. "And people don't find out things they should have found out. That's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault that you can point to. It's just what happened." A long pause. Outside, somewhere on the playground, other children were calling to each other. Bright and ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon, bleeding in through the art room windows. "My mom died," Milo said. Simply, flatly. A fact he had carried so long it no longer had sharp edges. Or at least, that was how it appeared. Keanu understood, from everything he knew about grief, that facts can look smooth on the outside for a very long time while staying sharp underneath. "I know," Keanu said. "I'm so sorry. I don't remember her. No, but Cassandra shows me her picture. Every birthday." He paused. "She has long black hair, and she's smiling really big, like someone just said something funny right before the picture." Keanu nodded. "She sounds like she was someone worth knowing," he said quietly. Milo looked at the octopus drawing between his hands. "Yeah," he said, "I think so too." A moment passed between them, warm and aching and completely honest, the way moments are when two people stop performing and simply exist together in the same truth. Then, Milo looked up again. "If you figure it out," he said carefully. "If it turns out you're my dad." He stopped, regrouped. "Are you going to take me somewhere? Like, a home?" The word home came out of him, like something he had been holding in his mouth for a very long time, not sure if it was safe to say aloud. Keanu looked at this boy, 7 years old, good shirt, 8-armed octopus on the table, the whole careful architecture of a child who had learned to want things quietly in case wanting them loudly made them disappear. "Yes," he said, without hesitation, without qualification. "That is exactly what I want to do." Milo looked at him for one more long moment. Then he picked up the octopus drawing, his best one, all 8 arms, each one right, and pushed it slowly across the table toward Keanu. "You can have that one," he said. Keanu looked at the drawing. "You sure?" he said. "Yeah." Milo picked up his crayon and pulled a fresh sheet of paper toward him. "I know how to make more." Keanu folded the drawing once, with both hands, very carefully, the same careful way he folded the photograph he had carried for 25 years, and placed it in his jacket pocket, close to his chest. At the doorway, Priya Nandakumar pressed her jasmine flower gently with one finger to make sure it was still there. It was. She exhaled slowly, and went back to hoping. June 14, 2024, 8:47 a.m. Family Court of the First Circuit, Honolulu, Hawaii. The building sits on Punchbowl Street in downtown Honolulu, 3 blocks from the Hawaii state capital, in the kind of neighborhood where history and ordinary life exist side by side, without either one making a fuss about the other. It is not an impressive building from the outside. It was not designed to impress. It was designed to hold difficult things carefully, and to process them justly, and to send people back out into the world with something decided. On the morning of June 14th, the sky above Honolulu was the particular shade of blue that only exists in Hawaii, deeper than mainland blue, cleaner, with a quality of light in it that makes even hard things look briefly possible. Keanu arrived at 8:47. He wore dark trousers and a plain white shirt, no tie. His legal team had suggested a tie. He had considered it for approximately 4 seconds and declined. He was not going to court to perform respectability. He was going to court to tell the truth about who he was and what he wanted, and to let the people whose job it was to decide such things make their decision. Margaret Ellison and her team were already inside, documents arranged, everything in order. The courtroom itself was small and deliberately plain. No gallery, no public seating, no cameras permitted. Courts that handle children's cases are kept this way on purpose. Children's lives are not public theater. The only people present were the people who needed to be there, and everyone in that room understood the weight of that. Judge Anita Moana Castillo took her seat at 9:03 a.m. She was 61 years old and had served on the family court bench in Honolulu for 14 years. She had short silver hair and reading glasses she wore on a chain around her neck, and a manner that was neither warm nor cold, but something more useful than either: steady. The kind of steady that comes from having sat with thousands of difficult decisions and having learned that rushing any of them helps no one. She opened the file. It was thick. 3 months of documentation, DNA verification, background investigation results, home study evaluations of both the Los Angeles residence and the Kaimuki apartment, supervised visitation reports filed by James Aloha after every Tuesday and every Saturday, character references, financial disclosures, medical records, and at the top of the stack, the report submitted by Dr. Rosa Figueroa, the guardian ad litem appointed solely to represent Dr. Figueroa was 53 years old and had been doing this specific work in Hawaii for 18 years. She had a reputation in the family court system for being unmovable by sentiment and unimpressed by status, which was exactly what the role required. She had met with Milo 6 times over the previous 10 weeks. She had observed 4 of the supervised visits, without Keanu or Milo knowing she was present. She had spoken with Priya Nandakumar, with Cassandra Wakefield, with Mrs. Tanaka at Kaimuki Elementary, and with 2 child psychologists who had worked with Milo over the years. Her report was 14 pages long. Judge Moana Castillo had read it twice the previous evening. The courtroom proceedings lasted 1 hour and 40 minutes. The judge asked questions, precise, unhurried, thorough, of Margaret Ellison, of the state's representative Deputy Attorney General Teresa Palakiko, of Cassandra Wakefield, and of Dr. Figueroa. She asked about stability. She asked about the child's therapeutic needs, and the prospective parents demonstrated understanding of them. She asked about continuity of care, specifically about Priya Nandakumar, and whether a transition plan had been considered that would allow Milo to maintain his relationship with the person who had been his primary caregiver for his entire conscious life. Margaret produced a document, a formal proposal, prepared with input from Cassandra and from Priya herself, outlining a transition plan that included regular visits between Milo and Priya during the adjustment period, maintained contact with the home's support staff, and continued sessions with Milo's existing child therapist, rather than an abrupt transfer to a new one. Keanu had asked for that plan specifically. He had sat with Cassandra for 2 hours on a Saturday evening 3 weeks earlier and asked her, not his lawyers, not his management team, but Cassandra, the woman who had known Milo longest after Priya, what Milo would need most in a transition. What would frighten him? What would help? She had told him. He had written it down. Then he had handed it to Margaret and told her to make it official. Judge Moana Castillo studied the transition document for a long moment over her reading glasses. She set it down. She looked across the courtroom at Keanu, who was sitting straight in his chair with his hands flat on the table and his eyes on the judge, steady and present, and completely without performance. She had seen many people in that chair over 14 years. She had developed, over time, an instinct about the ones who were there for the child and the ones who were there for themselves. The instinct was not infallible, but it was good. She picked up Dr. Figueroa's report. She read one passage aloud into the record. Dr. Figueroa had written, "In 18 years of this work, I have assessed hundreds of prospective placements. I am rarely moved to use the word remarkable in a professional report, as it is imprecise and subjective. I am using it here deliberately. The relationship that has developed between this child and this prospective parent over 10 weeks of supervised contact is remarkable in its authenticity, its pace, and above all in what it has produced in the child. Milo, who by every prior assessment demonstrated significant emotional guardedness consistent with early attachment disruption, has shown a measurable and consistent reduction in that guardedness in the presence of this individual. He is, in the language his caregiver Miss Nandakumar used when I interviewed her, and which I find I cannot improve upon, himself. Fully and without reservation. In my professional opinion, this represents the most significant protective factor for this child's long-term development that I have observed in his case file." The courtroom was very quiet when she finished reading. Deputy AG Palakiko made no objection. Judge Moana Castillo removed her reading glasses and set them on the bench in front of her. She looked at the file one final time. Then she looked up. She spoke for 4 minutes. The legal establishment of the paternal relationship between Keanu Charles Reeves and the minor child Milo Kahananui confirmed. The petition for immediate transfer of physical guardianship, pending finalized adoption proceedings, approved. The transition plan submitted by the prospective parent, accepted and entered into the court record as a binding condition of placement. Milo would leave Hale Malamalama. He would go with Keanu. The room did not erupt. There was no dramatic outburst, no flood of tears, no cinematic swelling of feeling. It was quiet. It was the specific quietness of something real, the sound of a decision that has been arrived at honestly, that serves the person it is meant to serve, and that everyone in the room knows is right. Cassandra Wakefield put her pen down on the table. She folded her hands. She breathed through her nose very slowly and deliberately, and looked at the middle distance, and allowed herself exactly 10 seconds of feeling everything before she put her professional face back on. Margaret Ellison closed her folder. Keanu said thank you to the judge clearly and directly, the way he said everything. He shook hands with his legal team. He crossed the room to Cassandra, and he thanked her for the email, for the 11 years, for every Tuesday and Saturday, for protecting Milo in all the years before anyone came looking. "He's extraordinary," Cassandra said. "I know," Keanu said. He drove to Hale Malamalama alone. Priya had made banana pancakes with honey that morning, Milo's favorite, and had told him only that it was a special day and that he should be ready after breakfast because someone was coming. She had helped him pack a small backpack the night before. He had chosen carefully what to put in it: his ocean animal book, his crayons, specifically the dark blue one labeled Midnight Ocean, a folder containing every octopus drawing he had made since the visits began, except the first 8-armed one, which he had given away. And at the very bottom of the backpack, wrapped carefully in a piece of the soft cloth Priya had cut from an old pillowcase so it wouldn't get bent, a photograph. A young woman with long black hair, smiling wide, laughing at something funny, a beach behind her, a whole life in front of her that went too short. He had asked Cassandra if he could take it. She had said, of course. She had said it was always his. Milo was on the climbing rock when the car pulled through the gate, not sitting at the base this time. At the top, leaning right, exactly the way he had described, looking out past the fence, and the street, and the rooftops, toward the thin, bright line of ocean, visible from that specific spot, on that specific rock, if you knew where to look, and leaned exactly right. He climbed down when he saw Keanu crossing the yard. He walked toward him in his good shirt, the backpack on both shoulders, his face doing the careful thing it did when he was feeling something large and was not yet sure it was safe to let it show. He stopped 2 feet away, looked up. "Is it figured out?" he asked. "It's figured out," Keanu said. Milo nodded once, the slow, certain nod of someone for whom the answer has confirmed something they already knew, somewhere deep and quiet, and had been waiting a very long time to have confirmed out loud. Then he did something he had never done in 7 years at Haile Malamalama. He did not reach for a hand. He stepped forward and wrapped both arms around Keanu's waist and pressed his face against him and held on. Not tentatively, not briefly, not in the careful, measured way he did most things, but fully, completely, with every bit of the 7 years of waiting that lived inside his small body. Keanu put both arms around him. He held on too. Above them, the mango tree stood perfectly still in the warm June air. Priya Nandakumar stood at the gate with the jasmine flower in her hair and both hands pressed flat against her chest, and watched them walk to the car. The tall man and the small boy, the backpack on both shoulders, fingers loosely linked. And she stood there until the car turned the corner and disappeared, and the street was quiet and ordinary again. Then she reached up. She unpinned the jasmine flower from her hair. She looked at it for a moment, small and white and still fragrant, the way jasmine always is even after a long day. She had worn it every Thursday, every hopeful Thursday for 7 weeks. She would not need it for hoping anymore. She placed it carefully in her pocket, and she went back inside, back to the home, back to the other children, back to the work that never ends, carrying something in her chest that was not quite joy and not quite grief, but the specific feeling that lives exactly between them, the feeling of a prayer, answered. But here is what nobody knew that day. Not Cassandra, not Priya, not Margaret Ellison, not the judge. 3 weeks after Milo left Haile Malamalama, an envelope arrived at the home addressed to Cassandra Wakefield, in careful, deliberate handwriting, the handwriting of someone who had worked very hard to make each letter exactly right. Inside was a drawing, 8 arms, perfectly spaced, the ocean in dark blue, midnight ocean, in the background, and at the bottom, in the careful handwriting of a 7-year-old boy who had just learned that some things you wait for actually come. 4 words. Cassandra read them once. Then she read them again. She sat down slowly in her chair. She placed the drawing flat on her desk and smoothed it once with both hands. She looked at it for a very long time. Then she stood up, walked to the wall behind her desk, the wall where she pinned things that mattered, things that reminded her on the hard days why the work was worth doing, and she pinned the drawing right in the center, right where she would see it first thing every morning. She never told anyone what the 4 words said. Not Priya, not James Aloha, not anyone on her team. Some things, she had learned in 11 years of this work, belong only to the people they were meant for. But on the hardest days, the days when the files were too heavy, and the system too slow, and the losses too many, she would look at that drawing, at the 8 perfect arms, at the midnight ocean behind them, at the 4 words written carefully at the bottom by a boy who had spent 7 years learning to hope quietly. And she would remember, and she would go back to work. This story is fiction, but it is built from real grief, real places, and a real man who has carried real loss with more grace than most people manage. Keanu Reeves was born September 2nd, 1964. His daughter Ava was stillborn on December 24, 1999, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Jennifer Syme died on April 2, 2001, on Cahuenga Boulevard. These things happened. The Waikiki Aquarium at 2777 Kalakaua Avenue has been open since 1904. The family court of the First Circuit sits on Punchbowl Street in Honolulu. These places are real. Milo is not real. But children like him are. Thousands of them. In homes with good names and tired staff, and jasmine flowers worn on hopeful days. The 4 words at the bottom of the drawing? I have 3 hearts. 1 for his mother. 1 he had always kept safe. And 1, new, and still learning its own edges, for the man who got on a plane. The house in the Hollywood Hills had never had a child's bedroom before. Keanu had started thinking about it in April, somewhere between the 3rd supervised visit and the 4th, on a Tuesday evening when he had driven back to the Kaimuki apartment and sat at the small kitchen table and realized, with the particular clarity that comes after long weeks of hoping carefully, that hope was becoming something more solid than hope. He had called Alexandra. I want to set up a room, he said. I don't want to wait until everything is decided to set up a room. I want it to be ready. Alexandra had been quiet for a moment. What does he like? She asked. The ocean, Keanu said. Octopuses specifically. The color dark blue. A crayon called Midnight Ocean. I'll start looking at things tomorrow, she said. She did not make it a production. She did not hire an interior designer with a portfolio full of magazine-ready children's rooms. She did the thing that people do when they understand that what a child needs is not impressive but true. She went to stores, and she looked at things, and she thought about a specific boy, and chose accordingly. By the time Keanu brought Milo through the front door of the Hollywood Hills house on the evening of June 14, 2024, the room was ready. But they did not go straight to the room. They drove from Hale Malamalama to Daniel K. Inouye International Airport in the late afternoon. Milo in the back seat with his backpack on his lap, not stowed, not set aside, held, watching Honolulu pass by the window with the expression of a person memorizing something. Which is what he was doing. At 7 years old, he understood, in the way children understand enormous things before they have the language for them, that this particular view of these particular streets was becoming the past in real time, and he wanted to look at it properly before it was entirely gone. Keanu did not tell him to look forward. He drove and let the boy look. At the airport, Keanu had arranged, at Margaret's insistence and on this point he had agreed, a private departure. Not a private jet. Milo, it turned out, had never been on any plane at all, and Keanu had decided they would fly commercial together, so the experience would be ordinary and not overwhelming. But a private departure lounge meant no crowd, no cameras, no strangers looking at a small boy carrying his whole life in a backpack and wondering about the story. They sat in the lounge and waited for the flight. Milo ate a bag of pretzels and asked 4 precise questions about how airplanes stayed in the air. Keanu answered all 4 as accurately as he could and admitted when he reached the limit of what he actually knew, which Milo seemed to respect. Miss P says it's okay not to know things, Milo said, as long as you say so instead of making something up. Miss P is right, Keanu said. Milo ate another pretzel. Will I see her again? He asked, casually. The way he asked the non-casual things, sideways, while looking at something else, the backpack still on his lap. Yes, Keanu said. That's already arranged. She's going to visit next month. And we can call her whenever you want. She has her own phone, and she told me her ringer is always on. Milo processed this. She hates it when people call after 9, he said. She always says 9 o'clock is the beginning of her quiet time. Then we won't call after 9, Keanu said. Okay, Milo said. He ate the last pretzel. Okay, he said again, quieter this time, to himself rather than to Keanu. The word doing the work of settling something that had been briefly unsettled back into place. The flight from Honolulu to Los Angeles took just over 5 hours. Milo sat in the window seat because Keanu offered it without being asked, and Milo accepted without pretending he didn't want it. For the first hour, he pressed his face close to the glass and watched the ocean below, dark and enormous and full, stretching in every direction with no visible end. "That's the Pacific," Keanu told him. "I know," Milo said. "It's the biggest ocean on Earth. It covers more than 30% of the planet's surface." "That's right." Milo pressed closer to the glass. "Octopuses live down there," he said quietly. "Right now, while we're up here. They're just down there, being octopuses." "Yeah," Keanu said. "They are." Milo stayed at the window for a long time, looking down at the water with the expression of someone who finds it deeply reassuring that the things they love are continuing to exist even when they cannot see them. Then he fell asleep. He fell asleep the way children fall asleep when they are finally, genuinely safe. Not gradually, not restlessly, but all at once, completely, between one breath and the next. His head tipped sideways against the window. The backpack slid off his lap. Keanu caught it before it hit the floor and set it gently on the empty seat on his other side. He looked at the boy sleeping against the plane window, the Pacific 35,000 feet below them both, the cabin dark and quiet around them. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out the folded octopus drawing. 8 arms, midnight ocean background, the first one with all 8 right, and he held it in both hands and looked at it for a long time. Then he put it back. He did not sleep himself. He stayed awake for the whole 5 hours, the way he had stayed awake the night before the first visit. Not from anxiety now, but from something else. Something that felt like not wanting to miss any of it. The way you stay awake during something you know you will want to remember completely. They landed at LAX at 11:40 at night. Alexandra met them at the private arrivals exit. She had brought a jacket for Milo, because Los Angeles in June is warm in the day and cool at night, and she had thought about that specifically. She crouched down to his level when she saw him, the same instinct Keanu had had on the playground, and she said hello and told him her name and did not make a fuss or a performance of the moment. Milo looked at her carefully. "Keanu told me about you," he said. "Good things, I hope," Alexandra said. "He said you're an artist," Milo said. "He said you make things that make people feel something when they look at them." Alexandra glanced up at Keanu briefly. "That's very kind of him," she said. "I make things too," Milo said. "Mostly octopuses." "I know," Alexandra said. "I've seen one. It's on the wall of the study." Milo's eyes moved to Keanu. Keanu gave the smallest shrug, the adult version of the shrug Milo had given on the playground. Pleased but unwilling to appear too pleased. "I framed it," he said simply. Something happened in Milo's face then. Something quick and bright and entirely unguarded. There and gone in a second, the way lightning is. And then his careful face came back. But everyone present had seen it. They drove to the Hollywood Hills house, through quiet late-night streets. Milo sat in the back and looked out the window at a city that was entirely new to him. Larger than Honolulu, louder even at midnight, the hills above them dotted with lights. The house was dark from the outside, except for a single warm light in one upstairs window. Keanu unlocked the front door and stood back. Milo walked in. He stood in the entrance and looked slowly around. At the wooden floors, at the bookshelves, at the ordinary and unflashy realness of the space, with his careful, assessing eyes. Taking inventory, understanding the rules of a new place before committing to it. Then he looked up at the stairs. "Which room is mine?" he asked. "Up the stairs," Keanu said. "Second door on the left." Milo went up the stairs alone, the backpack on both shoulders. Keanu and Alexandra stood in the entrance and listened to his footsteps on the wood, small and deliberate. And then the sound of the second door on the left opening. Silence. A long silence. Then Milo's voice, floating down the stairs, stripped of every careful layer, pure and open and completely unguarded in the way it had been only once before. At a school gate, hand held, belonging confirmed. "It's blue," he said. "The walls are blue. Midnight ocean," Alexandra called up to him. Another silence, shorter this time. "That's the right blue," Milo said. And downstairs, in the entrance of a house that had good wooden floors and bookshelves with cracked spines and a motorcycle in the garage, and now, finally, improbably, perfectly, a child's voice coming down the stairs, Keanu Reeves put his hand over his mouth and stood very still and let it land, all of it, every bit of it. September 3rd, 2024 was a Tuesday. It was also Milo's 8th birthday. And it was, by the kind of coincidence that does not feel like coincidence at all when you are standing inside it, the first day of the new school year at Wonderland Avenue Elementary School in the Laurel Canyon neighborhood of Los Angeles. A school with wide windows and old trees out front, and a gate painted the particular shade of green that gates at good schools always seem to be, as if good schools all agreed on that color a long time ago, and nobody has questioned it since. Keanu had chosen the school carefully. He had spent 3 weeks in July visiting schools across the west side of Los Angeles, with the focused thoroughness he brought to everything that mattered. He had sat in on classes where the teachers did not know who he was, and watched how they spoke to the children when nothing was being performed for a visitor. He had talked to principals and counselors and 2 child education specialists recommended by Dr. Anika Sousa in Honolulu, who had stayed involved as a remote resource through the transition. Wonderland Avenue had been the clear answer: small class sizes, a strong art program, which mattered specifically and practically, not decoratively, a science club that met on Wednesday lunchtimes and had, the previous year, built a small saltwater tank in the school library to study marine ecosystems. The teacher assigned to Milo's 2nd grade class was a man named Mr. Elroy Batiste, 38 years old, originally from New Orleans, with a patient, specific way of explaining things, and a classroom where the walls were covered entirely in student work rather than store-bought decorations. Milo had visited the school twice in August, both times with Keanu, both times with enough time to walk the hallways and find the bathrooms and locate the science club notice board and stand in front of the library saltwater tank for a considerable period without anyone hurrying him. On the 2nd visit, he had told Mr. Batiste, with the direct and unembellished confidence of a child who has researched his subject thoroughly, that the tank's salinity levels looked slightly low for optimal marine invertebrate health. Mr. Batiste had looked at him for a moment. Then he had pulled a chair up to the tank and sat down and asked Milo to explain what he meant. Milo explained, for 11 minutes, without stopping. Mr. Batiste listened to every word. On the drive home, Milo had been quiet in the back seat for a long time, watching the Los Angeles streets go by, in the particular way he watched things he was working out internally. Then he said, he listened the whole time. He didn't do the face. "What face?" Keanu asked. "The face adults do when they're waiting for you to stop talking," Milo said. "He didn't do it." "No," Keanu agreed. "He didn't." Another silence. "I think that school is okay," Milo said, which, Keanu had learned over 3 months, was Milo's version of "I love it completely and without reservation." The morning of September 3rd began at 6:08 a.m. Not because anyone set an alarm, because Milo was simply awake, sitting up in the midnight ocean room with his ocean animal book open on his lap, already dressed in his school clothes, backpack on the floor beside the bed already packed and zipped, when Keanu knocked softly and opened the door at 6:09. Keanu looked at him. "You've been up for a while," he said. "A little while," Milo said, which by the quality of light in his eyes meant at least an hour. "Are you nervous?" Milo considered the question with his characteristic seriousness, as though nervous were a technical term that required precise definition before he could answer accurately. My stomach feels like it has something moving in it, he said. That's nervous, Keanu said. Oh, Milo said. Okay then. Yes. Keanu leaned against the doorframe. You want to know something? He said. Milo looked at him. When I filmed the first Matrix movie, I had to learn an entirely new way of moving. Fighting, falling, all of it. Things I had never done before, around people who had been doing them their whole lives. He paused. The morning of the first day I filmed any of it, my stomach felt like it had something moving in it too. Milo processed this. What did you do? He asked. I showed up anyway, Keanu said. That's the whole trick. You just show up anyway, and let the day tell you the rest. A silence. Did it work? Milo asked. You've seen the movie, Keanu said. Milo almost smiled. The almost smile that was, Keanu had come to understand, better than most people's full ones. Okay, Milo said. He closed the ocean animal book. He picked up the backpack and put it on both shoulders. Okay, he said again, to himself, settling something. They made breakfast together, a thing that had become, over 3 months, one of the fixed and reliable rituals of their mornings together. The kind of ritual that quiet people build between each other naturally and without discussion. Keanu made the eggs. Milo made the toast, which he took very seriously and monitored with close attention, because he had strong views about the correct level of golden brown and believed, with some justification, that Keanu consistently underestimated it. Today was Milo's birthday, and so there were also banana pancakes. He had not asked for them. They were simply there, already made, keeping warm on a plate on the counter with honey beside them, because Keanu had been awake since 5:30, thinking about what it meant that today was both a first day and a birthday, and what the right gesture for that specific combination was. Banana pancakes with honey was the right gesture. Milo stood in the kitchen and looked at the plate for a moment. Then he put his backpack down and sat at the table and ate every one. He did not say thank you with words. He said it by the way he ate them, slowly, deliberately, the way you eat something that means more than food. Keanu washed the pan and said nothing, and let that be enough. They arrived at Wonderland Avenue Elementary at 8:19 a.m. The street in front of the school was the organized chaos of every first day of school everywhere. Cars pulling up and releasing small people with large backpacks, parents crouching for last-minute collar adjustments and whispered instructions, children breaking away from adult hands with the complex mixture of relief and terror that first days always produce. Keanu parked the car. They sat for a moment. Outside the windshield, the school gate was visible, painted green, open wide, the old trees on either side of it casting the kind of dappled morning shadow that makes everything look like a memory before it has even finished happening. Other children were streaming through it, some holding hands with parents, some running ahead, some standing just at the threshold doing the same internal calculation that Milo was currently doing from the passenger seat. Ready? Keanu asked. Milo looked at the gate. The stomach thing is still happening, he said. I know, Keanu said. It'll stop around lunchtime, maybe earlier. How do you know? Because by lunchtime, you'll have told someone about the salinity levels in the library tank and shown them how to draw an octopus, and the stomach thing won't have room left, Keanu said. Milo looked at him. This time it was the full smile, the unguarded one, the one with nothing behind it except pure and simple relief, the same one that had only ever appeared, in 7 years at Hale Malamalama, at a school gate with a hand held. Okay, he said. They got out of the car. They walked together along the path toward the gate, the tall man and the small boy with the backpack on both shoulders, their steps falling into the same rhythm the way they had started to do without either of them noticing, the way two people's steps do when they have been walking together long enough. At the gate, Keanu stopped. He did not crouch down and deliver a speech. He did not make a ceremony of it. He simply stopped walking and stood there, solidly, completely, visibly, at the gate, in the morning light, where every other child walking through it could see without any possibility of confusion that this boy, in his good shoes and his backpack, with his careful face and his ocean facts and his 3 hearts, belonged to somebody. Milo looked up at him once. Then he walked through the gate. 3 steps in, he turned around. Keanu was still there, still standing, both hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders level, going nowhere. Milo turned back. He walked toward the school building. He did not look back again. He did not need to. Keanu stood at that gate until the last child had gone through, and the path was empty, and the morning had gone quiet around him. He stood there longer than was necessary by any practical measure. A woman standing nearby, another parent, someone he did not know, glanced at him and then looked again the way people do when they recognize a face and are not sure what to do about it. She opened her mouth. He gave her the smallest shake of his head, not unkind, just private. She nodded and looked away. He stood at the gate alone, in the green-shadowed morning. He thought about a Christmas Eve in a hospital in Los Angeles 25 years ago, and he thought about a photograph he had carried in his bag across 2 oceans. And he thought about a woman with long black hair, laughing at something funny on a beach in Maui, who had not lived long enough to bring her son to a gate like this one. He thought, "I'll do it for you. I'll stand here for both of us, every single time." Then he walked back to the car. He drove home through the Laurel Canyon morning, the city waking up golden around him, the house waiting empty and quiet at the top of the hill, the wooden floors, the bookshelves, the midnight ocean room. He went inside. He made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened his laptop. There were emails. He scrolled past them without seeing them. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the folded octopus drawing. 8 arms, all correct, midnight ocean behind them. And he set it flat on the table in front of him and smoothed it once with both hands, the same way Cassandra had smoothed her drawing on a different table in a different city. He looked at it for a long time. Outside, the Hollywood Hills were gold in the morning light, the same gold they had been on the morning 6 months ago when he had read an email with a plain, small subject line and reached for his keys before he had finished reading. He thought about 3 hearts, one for a mother, one kept safe, one still learning its edges. He picked up his coffee. He drank it warm this time. For the first time in longer than he could easily remember, the coffee was warm. He picked up his coffee. He drank it warm this time. For the first time in longer than he could easily remember, the coffee was warm. December 3rd, 2024, was a Tuesday. It was also, by the accounting of the family court of the First Circuit of Hawaii, the day that everything became permanent. The adoption finalization hearing had been scheduled for 10 a.m. Judge Anita Moana Castillo had cleared her morning calendar for it. Not because finalization hearings were long, they rarely were, but because she believed that the moments which closed difficult chapters deserved unhurried time around them. Space before and after. Room for the weight of the thing to be properly felt by everyone in the room. Keanu had flown back to Honolulu 2 days earlier. He had brought Milo with him. Milo had been to Honolulu once since June, in July, when Priya had visited Los Angeles as arranged, and then insisted on treating them both to shave ice on the waterfront, in a way that made it clear the visit was actually for Milo's benefit, but that Priya preferred to frame as mutual, so nobody had to feel too looked after. The visit had lasted 4 days, and had been, by every measure, exactly what everyone needed. Milo had shown Priya his school backpack and his midnight ocean room, and the framed octopus drawing on the study wall. And Priya had looked at all of it with the careful attention of someone memorizing things they want to carry home. She had cried once, briefly, in the kitchen with Alexandra, while Milo and Keanu were in the backyard. Alexandra had given her tea and said nothing, and let the crying be what it was. Not sad, not happy, but the specific feeling that lives between them. the one without a clean name. Coming back to Honolulu felt different now. Milo sat in the window seat again on the flight. He always took the window seat. It was an established fact of their traveling life together now, non-negotiable, completely understood, and watched the islands appear below them, through the clouds the way a person watches something beloved that they have been away from long enough to miss. "It looks smaller from up here," he said. "Most things do," Keanu said. Milo pressed close to the glass. "But it isn't smaller," he said. "It just looks it. It's the same size it always was." He said it the way he said things that were about more than what they appeared to be about. Factually, carefully, looking out the window, rather than at Keanu while he said it. The ocean below them, the islands, the home that was no longer his home, but was still the place that had kept him safe until his actual home was ready. The same size it always was. Keanu looked at him for a moment. "Yeah," he said quietly, "exactly right." They stayed at the same Kaimuki apartment. The landlord, a retired schoolteacher named Mr. Furtado, who wore the same fishing hat every day and asked no questions and expected the same in return, had kept it available without being asked to, on the grounds, he told Keanu when they arrived, that he had a feeling it would be needed again. Keanu paid him for 3 months he hadn't used. Mr. Furtado tried to refuse. Keanu left the envelope on the kitchen table and took Milo to the Waikiki Aquarium for the afternoon. Bernard the Moorish idol was still there. Milo stood at the tank for a long time, without saying anything, just looking, with that steady interior expression of his, at the fish moving slowly through the blue water. "He looks good," Milo said finally. "Yeah?" Keanu said. "Yeah." A pause. "He looks like he doesn't know anything changed." He said it without sadness, as an observation, as a thing about fish and also, possibly, about something else entirely. The way Milo frequently said things that were about fish and also something else entirely. Maybe for him it didn't, Keanu said. Milo considered this. "That's okay," he said. "Things can change a lot for some people, and not at all for others, and both can be fine." Keanu looked at him. This 8-year-old boy with the ocean in his eyes, and the philosopher's instincts, and the 3 hearts he had named and claimed entirely on his own. "Where did you get that from?" he asked. Milo looked at him with mild surprise, as though the answer were obvious. "I thought of it," he said. The morning of December 3rd arrived cold by Honolulu standards, which meant the air had a slight sharpness to it that locals noticed, even if visitors from the mainland would have called it simply pleasant. The sky was clear. The light was the particular winter light of the islands, lower and more golden than summer, with long shadows in the mornings that made everything look as though it were being seen through warm glass. Priya arrived at the apartment at 8:30. She was wearing her good clothes and the jasmine flower above her left ear. Milo saw the flower immediately. He looked at it for a moment. He knew what it meant, had always known without being told. And then he looked at Priya's face, which was trying very hard to be professionally composed, and was not entirely succeeding. He walked to her and hugged her around the middle, the same way he had hugged Keanu at the gate in June. Fully, completely, without the careful, measured quality of most of his physical expressions. Priya put both arms around him and closed her eyes and held on. Cassandra Wakefield arrived at 8:45 in her good coat, with a folder under one arm and her silver-streaked hair pinned back neatly. She shook Keanu's hand, and then, departing entirely from her professional manner, hugged him, briefly, firmly, once, and said nothing, because nothing needed saying. James Aloha was already at the courthouse. He had bought flowers, a small bunch of white tuberose from the market near his house, and left them on the table in the waiting area outside the courtroom, then stood beside them with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor in the way he always looked at the floor during important moments. Margaret Ellison had flown in from Los Angeles. She wore a dark suit and brought documents that were already signed and tabbed, and organized with the thoroughness that had characterized every stage of the preceding 9 months. She had a reputation for being unmoved by sentiment. She had also, Keanu had noticed, worn the same slight brightness around the eyes since she arrived the previous afternoon that she was clearly working to keep under professional control. Judge Moana Castillo took her seat at 10:03 a.m. The courtroom held 9 people: Keanu, Milo, Priya, Cassandra, James, Margaret, and one associate, Dr. Rosa Figueroa, the guardian ad litem, who had submitted her final report the previous week and whose last line had read simply, "This case represents the outcome this process exists to produce. I have nothing further to add." And Mr. Furtado, the retired school teacher in the fishing hat, who had driven himself to the courthouse in his old truck and sat quietly in the back because Keanu had mentioned the date when he paid him for the unused months, and Mr. Furtado had said nothing at the time, but had clearly decided privately that he wanted to be there. Nobody asked him to leave. Judge Moana Castillo reviewed the final documents. She confirmed each legal requirement had been met, every step, every review, every condition of the transition plan. She asked Milo 2 questions directly, speaking to him as she would speak to any person in her courtroom. Seriously, without the talking down quality that children in formal settings often endure. The first question: did he understand what today meant? Milo said yes. He said it meant he was Keanu's son, officially, on paper, in the way that courts made things real. The judge nodded. The second question: was this what he wanted? Milo looked at the judge for a moment with his steady, taking everything in eyes. Then he said, simply and without drama, "I've wanted this my whole life. I just didn't know his name yet." The courtroom went very still. Mr. Furtado looked at the ceiling. James Aloha looked at the floor. Margaret Ellison put her pen down. Judge Moana Castillo looked at Milo for a long moment over her reading glasses. Then she looked down at the document in front of her, the final decree of adoption, the last piece of paper, the one that ends one story and begins another in the same breath. She signed it. She dated it December 3rd, 2024. She slid it across the bench. It was Milo's turn. Cassandra had explained this part to him the week before, that in Hawaii adoption finalizations, when a child is old enough, they are invited to sign the decree as well. Not required, invited, because it is their life, and the law, at its best, understands that. Milo had practiced his signature 3 times the previous evening at the Kaimuki apartment kitchen table, with Keanu sitting across from him reading and saying nothing, just being there, which was what Milo had asked for when he said he wanted to practice. He walked to the bench. The clerk placed the document in front of him and held the pen out. Milo took the pen. He looked at the document, at the lines of legal language, at the judge's signature, at the date, at his name, printed in the formal way of official papers, Milo Kahananui. And beside it, in the column that the court had prepared and that Margaret had confirmed and that Judge Moana Castillo had approved with the signature she had just applied, his new name, the name he would carry forward. Milo Kahananui Reeves. He kept his mother's name. That had been Keanu's suggestion, made privately to Margaret in April, formalized in the petition in May, never once questioned by the court. Leilani Kahananui had not abandoned her son. She had loved him for 11 months, and then the world had taken her, and she deserved to be carried forward with him into whatever came next. Milo had been told about this in June, 2 weeks after he moved to the Hollywood Hills house, when Keanu sat with him at the kitchen table one morning and explained it simply and directly. Milo had not said anything for a long moment. Then he had said, "She stays with me. She stays with you," Keanu had confirmed. "Okay," Milo had said, and picked up his toast. Now he stood at the bench of the family court of the First Circuit, with a pen in his hand, and looked at his new name printed on the last piece of paper. He signed it, carefully, deliberately, the way he did everything that mattered. Milo Keanu Reeves. He put the pen down. He walked back to his seat beside Keanu. He sat down. He looked straight ahead for a moment, at nothing in particular. At the plain wall of the courtroom, at the flag in the corner, at the ordinary and unremarkable backdrop of a moment that was anything but. Then he turned to Keanu, and in the quietest voice, not a whisper, but the kind of quiet that is more than a whisper, the kind that carries because the room bends toward it, he said 4 words. Not the 4 words on the drawing, different ones, new ones. 4 words that Keanu would carry for the rest of his life, the way he had once carried a photograph. Not framed, not displayed, kept close and private and real. Taken out only in the quiet moments when he needed to remember exactly what everything had been for. He would never repeat them publicly. He would never write them down. They belonged only to the 2 of them, to a man who had learned that love does not expire with loss, and to a boy who had spent 8 years keeping one heart safe until he found the person it was for. The judge gathered her papers. The room began to breathe again. Priya pressed the jasmine flower once with one finger. And outside the courthouse on Punchbowl Street, Honolulu lay warm and golden under a December sky. The city going about its Tuesday business, entirely unaware that 9 people in a plain room 3 blocks from the state capitol had just quietly and completely changed one small life, and one large one. And outside the courthouse on Punchbowl Street, Honolulu lay warm and golden under a December sky. The city going about its Tuesday business, entirely unaware that 9 people in a plain room 3 blocks from the state capitol had just quietly and completely changed one small life, and one large one. They went for shave ice afterward. Not a restaurant with a reservation. Not a celebration that had been planned and arranged and catered. Just shave ice from a small stand near the waterfront that Priya had been going to for 20 years, and that had no indoor seating and a handwritten menu board that had not changed, by Priya's estimation, since approximately 2009. Milo got mango and lilikoi. Keanu got coconut. Priya got red bean, which she always got, and which Milo had been saying for 3 visits, now sounded deeply wrong as a shave ice flavor, and which Priya maintained with great serenity was his loss entirely. They stood on the waterfront in the December sun and ate their shave ice, and the conversation moved easily and without agenda. Priya telling a story about a new child at the home who had decided, with magnificent confidence, that he was the world's foremost expert on dinosaurs, despite being 4 years old. Cassandra arriving 15 minutes late because she had stopped at the office to pin something on her wall, which everyone understood without needing it explained. James Aloha eating his shave ice with the same quiet contentment he brought to every situation. Mr. Furtado standing slightly apart from the group in his fishing hat, looking at the ocean with the expression of a man who came to the water regularly and found it consistently satisfactory. Margaret Ellison, who had also come, stood with her shave ice, Li Hing Mui, which she had ordered with the decisive confidence of someone who had made this particular choice before, and looked at the group around her with the expression she had been quietly managing since the courtroom. She was not a woman who cried at work. She was, however, a woman who recognized important moments. She looked at Milo, standing between Priya and Keanu on the waterfront with mango and lilikoi melting slightly down his wrist, talking about the salinity levels of the open ocean versus the tank at Wonderland Avenue Elementary, as though this were the most natural continuation of a courthouse adoption finalization that anyone could imagine. And she decided, privately and finally, that this was the best case of her 30-year career. She would not tell anyone that, but she would know it. The drive back to the airport was quiet, in the good way. Priya sat in the back with Milo. Keanu drove. The Honolulu streets moved past them, the same streets Milo had watched from the car window in June, memorizing them as they became the past. Now they were simply streets. The past had settled into its proper place, and stopped asking to be memorized. Milo looked out the window. He had been quieter since the courthouse. Not withdrawn, not sad, but interior. The way he got when he was processing something large and needed to turn it over completely before he was done with it. Priya had her hand resting near his on the seat between them, not holding it, just near it. Available. He had not taken it, which meant he was okay. He always reached for hands when he was not okay. She knew his language completely. They were 20 minutes from the airport when Milo spoke. He had been looking out the window at a row of palm trees lining the road, the fronds moving in the warm coastal wind, and he turned from the window with an expression of someone who has been thinking about something for a while and has finally arrived at the specific question the thinking was building toward. "Keanu," he said. "Yeah. Can octopuses be adopted?" The car was very quiet for a moment. Priya looked out her own window. Her shoulders were doing something she was working to control. Keanu kept his eyes on the road. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. "Like," Milo said, with the patient precision of someone explaining an idea they have considered from multiple angles. If an octopus egg got separated from its mother before it hatched, and another octopus found it, could the other octopus raise it? A pause. "As its own," Milo added, in case the question had been unclear. Keanu's hands were steady on the wheel. His jaw was doing something specific. "I think," he said, very carefully, "that in the ocean, things find ways to take care of each other that science is still figuring out." Milo absorbed this. "So possibly yes," he said. "Possibly yes," Keanu agreed. Milo nodded once, with the satisfied air of someone whose hypothesis has been neither confirmed nor denied, but has been taken seriously, which was all he had really needed. He turned back to the window. "I'm going to research it," he said, "for the science club." "That's a good idea," Keanu said. "Mr. Batiste will like it," Milo said. "He likes questions that don't have easy answers." "Smart man," Keanu said. "Yeah," Milo said. "He doesn't do the face." And then, from the front seat, helpless and sudden and entirely genuine, the way laughter comes when joy catches a person completely off guard and they have no defenses left against it, Keanu laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not the careful, measured laugh of a man who is aware of being observed. The full one. The real one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and unguarded and has nothing in it except pure and uncomplicated delight at being alive in this specific moment, in this specific car, on this specific road, with these specific people. It lasted a long time. Priya pressed her hand over her mouth, eyes bright. Milo looked at Keanu with mild surprise, and then the almost smile appeared, the one that was better than most people's full ones. And he turned back to the window with the quiet satisfaction of a person who has caused a good thing without having tried to. The flight home left at 4:15 p.m. Milo took the window seat. He watched Honolulu fall away below them as the plane climbed. The green hills, the white buildings, the harbor, the ocean opening wide and endless beyond it all. He watched it until the clouds closed beneath them and there was nothing left to see but white and then blue. Then he settled back in his seat. He reached into his backpack and took out his ocean animal book, the same one from the Hale Malamalama library, which Cassandra had given him when he left, pressing it into his hands at the gate and saying it had always been more his than the library's anyway. He opened it to the octopus page. He looked at it for a while. Then he closed it and held it on his lap and looked at the seat back in front of him, with the interior expression of someone who is not seeing the seat back at all, but something else entirely. Something inward, and settled, and quietly complete. Keanu looked at him. "You okay?" he asked. Milo thought about it honestly, the way he thought about everything. "Yeah," he said. "I'm okay." A pause. "I'm actually okay." The distinction mattered. Keanu understood it. Okay, was a word Milo had used many times over many months in many situations. As a placeholder, as a shield, as the polite and careful answer of a child who had learned not to ask for too much reassurance. Actually okay was different. Actually okay was a report from the inside, accurate and unguarded, the difference between the face a person shows and the thing a person feels. He was actually okay. Keanu looked back at the seat in front of him. Outside the window, the Pacific spread wide and endlessly blue below them, just as it had on the flight over 6 months ago, when Keanu had taken out a photograph and looked at it over the water and thought about what it meant to be a father. He reached into his jacket pocket. The folded octopus drawing was there. The 8-armed one, the first complete one, midnight ocean in the background, where it had been every day since the art room in May. He took it out. He held it in both hands. He thought about Ava. He thought about Jennifer. He thought about Leilani Kahananui, laughing at something funny on a beach in Maui, on an ordinary day that became extraordinary only in retrospect. He thought about all the people who were not in this plane seat beside him, but whose absence had shaped the exact specific path that led to the person who was. He thought, grief is not the opposite of love. It is love with nowhere to go, waiting, just waiting, until something opens. He folded the drawing carefully and put it back in his pocket. He looked at Milo. Milo had fallen asleep again, the same complete and total way he had slept on the first flight, between one breath and the next, face tipped toward the window. The ocean animal book was still in his hands, held loosely now, the octopus page visible through the half-open cover. Keanu reached over carefully and took the book and set it gently in the seat pocket so it wouldn't fall. He looked at his son. His son. The word was new and also ancient, the way the truest words always are, as though they existed long before you had anything to attach them to, waiting in the language like a room with the light already on, just waiting for someone to walk through the door. He looked out the window at the darkening Pacific below. He thought about a boy who had 3 hearts, one for his mother, Leilani, who had laughed on a beach and loved her son for 11 months and deserved to be carried forward. One he had always kept safe, guarded and careful and waiting, the way Milo kept all the things that mattered most. And one, still new, still learning its edges, still discovering the full size and shape of what it could hold. For the man who had read an email with cold coffee and trembling hands and reached for his keys before he had finished reading. For the man who had flown 5 hours across the Pacific on a commercial flight because he wanted to arrive like a person. For the man who had crouched in the dirt beside a climbing rock and asked about an octopus with 7 arms, and stayed, and stayed, and stayed. Keanu Reeves looked at his sleeping son in the window seat of a plane above the Pacific Ocean on a Tuesday evening in December, and felt, underneath the grief that never entirely leaves, underneath the loss that has no cure, underneath all the years of carrying things that were too heavy and carrying them anyway, something so simple and so complete that it had no name in any language he knew. It did not need one. It was enough to feel it. It was more than enough. Outside the window, somewhere 35,000 feet below, in the deep dark water of the largest ocean on the planet, octopuses were opening jars and changing colors and moving through the dark with their 8 arms and their 3 hearts. Doing what they had always done, being, against all odds and in the most inhospitable conditions imaginable, exactly what they were built to be. Milo would have said, "See, I told you," and he would have been right. He usually was. This story is fiction, but it is built from real grief, real places, real dates, and one real man who has moved through extraordinary loss, with extraordinary grace, and whose life, the actual documented life, not the legend, contains more genuine tenderness than most of the roles he has ever played. Keanu Charles Reeves was born September 2, 1964. in Beirut, Lebanon. His daughter, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was stillborn on December 24, 1999, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Jennifer Syme died on April 2, 2001, on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles. She was 28 years old. These things happened, and they are not decoration. They are the foundation of a real person's real life. The Waikiki Aquarium is located at 2777 Kalakaua Avenue in Honolulu and has been open since 1904. Punchbowl Street in downtown Honolulu is real, and the family court of the First Circuit sits there. Kaimuki is a real and quiet residential neighborhood in Honolulu. Wonderland Avenue Elementary School is a real school in Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles. Leilani is a real Hawaiian name. Milo is not a Hawaiian name, which is the point. He is a boy from everywhere and nowhere, the way children in care so often are, waiting for the place that will finally be specifically theirs. Keanu Reeves has no confirmed biological children. He has never been connected to any paternity case. This story imagines a different life, running quietly alongside the documented one. A life in which the grief that is genuinely his eventually leads somewhere that grief, at its most profound, sometimes does. Toward something opened. Toward a door with the light already on. Toward a boy on a climbing rock leaning right, looking for the ocean, waiting, without knowing he was waiting for a hand that would simply be there when he reached. The 4 words Milo said in the courtroom after he signed his name? "I knew it was you." He had known, he said later, quietly, to Priya, on a phone call on a Wednesday evening when Keanu was in the other room, since the very first day on the playground, since the man crouched down to be at his level, since he didn't pretend the 7-armed octopus had 8, since he just stayed. Some children, Priya told Cassandra the next morning, still wearing the jasmine flower from the day before because she had not been able to bring herself to take it out, know the truth of a thing before the paperwork catches up. Cassandra pinned the drawing a little straighter on her wall and went back to work. For every Milo, for every climbing rock, for every jasmine flower worn on a hopeful Thursday, and for the real Keanu, whoever he is when no one is watching, who has given the world enough genuine grace that imagining more of it requires no effort at all. And that is the story of Keanu Reeves, a little boy named Milo, a climbing rock near a mango tree, and the most important email ever opened over cold coffee on a quiet Tuesday morning in the Hollywood Hills. A man who had carried loss for 25 years, a boy who had carried hope for 8, and the DNA match that found them both. Before you go, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your country, your little corner of the world in the comments below. Because every single time we read those comments, we are reminded that kindness does not belong to one place or one person or one story. It lives everywhere, in every city, in every country, in every person who watches a story like this one and feels something real move inside them. That feeling matters. And if this story moved you, if Milo's 3 hearts and Keanu's cold coffee and Priya's jasmine flower on hopeful Thursdays made you feel something worth holding on to, then do one simple thing before you leave this page. Hit the like button. Not for us, for every child in a house of light somewhere in this world who is still waiting for someone to walk them through the school gate. Every like tells the world that stories of kindness matter, that they deserve to be seen, that they deserve to be shared. And if you want more stories like this one, stories about real people, real grief, real grace, and the moments that quietly change everything, then subscribe to this channel right now and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single one. We find these stories so you do not have to go looking, because the world has more kindness in it than the news will ever show you. And it is our job to prove that, every single week, one story at a time. Now, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. because the next story is already waiting, and we have a feeling it is exactly what you need to hear today.